All right, so far this week, we've learned the basic parts of a sentence, how to label and color code subject, action, and action blocks, including when, where, why, and how. We're going to start today by reviewing and practicing labeling some sentences, and then we're going to take a closer look at the where and the when groups. So let's look at activity 8, label sentences with introductory clauses and phrases. Some of these are going to have the opening clause or phrase that we did yesterday, and that's how they're different from the last sentences that you labeled. Notice the first one is done for you, but it's not highlighted. So let's go ahead and take care of that. So in order to practice fire breathing is the why. And then the baby dragon or subject. And what did the baby dragon do? Roast marshmallows. Where? And the king. All right, so that's the first one. Now let's look at number 2. I'm going to color code and then we'll label. So our subject is the knight. Well, what did the knight do? It flew. And then over the mountains tells us where. And then we have at sunset, another action block that tells us when. So let's go ahead and label subject action. Blue is our action. And then over the mountains tells us where. And at sunset tells us when. All right. Number 3, after the sun went down, so we're starting with an action block. The princess curled up on a pile of gold to guard it from thieves. The princess is our subject. Curled up is our action. So on a pile of gold to guard it from thieves. And swallows curled up on a pile of gold to guard it from thieves. After the sun went down tells us when. The princess tells us subject. Up is the action. On a pile of gold tells us where. To guard it from thieves tells us why. We'll do one more together, and then I'll let you finish the others. For the children, the dragon performed aerial tricks every afternoon at the castle. So this starts with, for the children, be why. It starts with the why block. Doesn't end with any. Yes, every afternoon tells well, at the castle tells where. So our subject, the dragon, and our action is performed aerial tricks. So we know the parts of the sentence, why, and then our subject is the dragon. Performed aerial tricks is our action. Every afternoon tells us when, and at the castle tells us where. Great, that was a good little review of what we've learned so far. So let's take a good look today at the where blocks. You may have noticed that all of the where blocks and some of the other blocks contain prepositional phrases. You do have one page that you're going to glue down in your guidebook today. I'll show you that page. I'm sorry, 2 and 3 pages. So the first page is the where page. It looks like this. I colored line in. And then right here, you've got a list of prepositions. So those prepositions are the most common prepositions that are going to be found to tell where. So you can revert back to here if you forget or you get confused, or if you're needing to write a where block and your brain is blocked, you can come here and use that as a springboard. So let's look at these prepositional phrases. We're going to circle the preposition and then underline the object of the preposition. Last, we're going to draw an arrow from the preposition to its object. All right, let's look at the first one. Beyond the horizon. All right, so for each prepositional phrase, we're going to circle the preposition, underline the object of the preposition. The object of the preposition is always a noun, and there's just one noun. There might be describing words around it, but it's just going to be one noun. There's often an A, N, or the, an article in the middle, just like this first one. Beyond is beyond is the preposition, so we're going to circle it. And then horizon is the object of the preposition. So we're going to draw an arrow from beyond to horizon because a preposition is going to tell us a location or where in reference to the horizon. Then we have at is our preposition at the crossroads. Crossroads is our object of the preposition. At tells where we are in relation to the crossroads. Through the dense forest. Through is the preposition. And forest is the object of the preposition. Through tells us where in relation to the forest. It's through the forest. Inside is a preposition. And the treasure chest is the object of the preposition. Above is a preposition. Clouds is the object of the preposition. Amidst is the preposition. Chaos is the object of the preposition. All right, down the rabbit hole. Down is preposition. Hole is the object. So down the rabbit hole. Off the beaten path. Off is the preposition. Path is the object of the preposition. All right, so let's look at this one. You'll often see some like this, to the ends of the earth, that have a prepositional phrase within a prepositional phrase. Don't worry about that. We're just going to clump it all together. If we look at to the ends of the earth, to is our preposition. To the what, to the ends is our object of the preposition. To the ends of the earth just tell us more about ends, right? To the ends of the earth. Next, we have along the winding mountain trail. Not mountain, but trail is our object of the preposition. Winding and mountain are both describer words. Along the trail. Near the edge of the shimmering lake. Near the edge. And once again, of the shimmering lake is going to describe or modify edge. It tells which edge. Beyond is the preposition. The veil. Beyond the veil of secrecy. Tells which veil we're talking about. All right, let's do these last few. On the cusp of adulthood, behind the roaring waterfall, behind waterfall, along the riverbank, of the towering skyscrapers, another preposition phrase modifies top. In the heart of the bustling city, tells which heart. Atop the majestic summit of Mount Everest. Atop summit, and then of Mount Everest. And it tells us which summit. All right, you have a page like this. Let's go ahead and look at that. If you look under the where column, you'll see several prepositional phrases. The instructions say to do what your teacher tells you to do. So just do what I'm telling you to do. It's the same thing we just did. You're going to circle the preposition in each one, underline the prepositional phrase, and draw an arrow from the preposition of the prepositional phrase. So one more, beneath the old oak tree. So beneath the tree. All right, so go ahead and finish this column. All right. Next, we're going to look at prepositional phrases for when blocks. Just like we had where blocks before, we're going to have some when blocks, and we're going to look for the preposition and then the object of the preposition, and we're going to draw the arrow. The instructions say in each prepositional phrase, circle the preposition, underline the object of the preposition. Last, draw an arrow from the preposition to its object. If the phrase is not a prepositional phrase, skip it. This is why we're doing this in the first place with prepositional phrases, because I want you to be able to look at a phrase that starts with what looks like a preposition and know for sure if it's a prepositional phrase or not. All right, so let's look at the first one. In the twilight hours. In is the preposition. The twilight hours. So in the twilight hours tells us when it happened, when the action happened, whatever the action is. Next, we have during the afternoon lull. During is a preposition. The object of the preposition, the afternoon lull. Next, on leisurely weekends. On is the preposition. Weekends is the object of the preposition. On leisurely weekends is a prepositional phrase. Next, we have after we eat dinner. After is a preposition. And then here's where it starts to fall apart, because what is the object of the preposition? We eat dinner. There's not just an object with describing words. We eat dinner. We have what looks like a preposition, but it's actually not. After, and then we, a subject, eat an action, and dinner tells what we eat. So that's the direct object. What is going on here? Let's hold off and let's just say for now that it is not a prepositional phrase. So we can recognize that as we're doing the marking for a prepositional phrase. So let's go ahead and go with that last one. We're going to save this. All right, let's find some more prepositional phrases. At the first light of dawn. At the first light, and then of dawn tells more, right? In the midst of the storm's fury. In the midst is actually the prepositional phrase, and then of the storm's fury is the secondary. On ordinary weekdays. On weekdays. Perfect. Very similar on festive occasions. On occasion. At the stroke of midnight. This has more words in it, so it looks like it might be something beside a prepositional phrase, but it's not. At actually the stroke, not at midnight, because it's the stroke of midnight. At the stroke of midnight. Next, we have when the final bell tolls. Here, it's not a prepositional phrase, so let's skip it. At the musical performance. In the heart of winter. In is the preposition, heart is the object. In the heart of winter tells which heart. Before you embark on your journey. Before could be a preposition, but then we've got a subject, you embark, a verb, an action, and where. That's a mess. So we skipped a few. I think we might have a couple more, actually. Here we go. After the sun dips below the horizon, once again, we have what looks like a preposition, but upon further inspection, it falls apart. After the sun dips below the horizon, the sun dips is another subject in action here, so we're going to skip it. In the early hours of the morning. So in the early hours of the morning, she tells more about the hours. Throughout the summer months, when the school bell chimes, we've got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that were not prepositional phrases. So let's look at those. So let's move them up here. I'll load this double. All right, so we decided that these are not prepositional phrases, but we want to figure out what they are. Remember, we said that they all start with what looks like a preposition, right? After, when, these could be prepositions, but they're not used as prepositions here. After, and then they all have the subject and an action. After we eat dinner. When the final bell tolls. Next, we've got when the school bell chimes. So when the school bell chimes, school bell is the noun, chimes is the verb. All right, before you embark on your journey, you is the subject, and embark on your journey is the action. After the sun dips below the horizon. Again, we've got on your journey below the horizon. That's okay because they're part of this bigger wind block. So what do we call this if we have a phrase or a clause that has a subject and a verb? They all have a subject and a verb. They all follow the same pattern. What prevents them from being the primary subject and action of the sentence? It's this word that starts off every one of these clauses. We eat dinner could be a complete statement, but if you include the after, so that now it's after we eat dinner, that makes it not a complete statement. Anybody remember what that's called? So what are these if they're not prepositions? Does anyone know what those are called? It's a hard one, but I hope somebody knows. Well, let's see. See if you can figure it out. Dependent clauses. So a dependent clause is what this is. It can't stand on its own. It's not an independent clause, right? It's not an independent clause. It's dependent because it depends on the rest of the sentence. So these are dependent clauses. What are these words? After, before, when, if not prepositions, what are those words? Ready? See if you can guess while I'm writing it. Subordinating conjunctions. So you'll recognize that you're dealing with dependent clauses and subordinated conjunctions when you don't have simply a prepositional phrase. You end up with a mini sentence, a subject and an action, in one of these subordinated conjunctions that tell when. We're going to practice sorting these. We're going to decide if it's a prepositional phrase or a dependent clause. In the early evening, only telling us where, so it's a prepositional phrase. While the campfire crackles, do we have the subject and a verb? Yes, the campfire crackled, so that's going to be a dependent clause. When someone rescued me, do we have a subject and a verb? Yes, someone rescued me. That's a dependent clause. On a rainy afternoon, do we have a subject and a verb? What? So that's just a prepositional phrase. When the door flew open, do we have a subject and a verb? Door is the subject, flew open is an action, so that's a dependent clause. At the crack of dawn. At is the preposition, and the crack, at the crack of dawn. That's a prepositional phrase. Whenever the phone rings, again, you should recognize that we have the phone is a subject. Rings is a verb, so that's a dependent clause. As long as the music played, once again, it starts with what looks like a preposition, but the music played is a subject predicate, so that's a dependent clause. During the exciting game, that's just during the game. That's just a regular prepositional phrase. On a rainy afternoon, it does not have an action. So it's simply a prepositional phrase. All right, now you're going to get to practice on your own. You're going to decide if each group of words is a prepositional phrase that tells where, in that case, PP where, a prepositional phrase that tells when, so you'll write PP when, or a dependent clause that tells when, and then you'll write DC when. Let me do a few examples for you. PP is for prepositional phrase, so we're distinguishing between prepositional phrases and dependent clauses here. Number one is done for us. Under the abandoned warehouse. Under is the preposition, right? Under the warehouse. That is a prepositional phrase that tells where. During the early morning hours, once again, we have during. It's a preposition. Hours. There is no action. So this is also is a prepositional phrase, but this one tells when. So, okay. Well, next we have when the sky turned dark. So this time we actually do have the whole shebang. So we have when, and then we have the sky turned dark, a subject, a little mini subject and predicate. The sky turned dark. So that means that we have a dependent clause. Let's write DC for dependent clause. And this one tells us when. Next, we have after the storm passed. After could be a preposition, but no, we have an action. So here, the storm passed. Storm is our subject and past is our verb. So that is going to be a dependent clause. We know it's a dependent clause because we had to box the subject and the predicate. It wasn't simply a preposition and then an object of the preposition. Let's look at one more. Beside the crumbling statue, do we have an action? Almost. Crumbling is not an action. It doesn't say crumbled, and there's no subject. The statue is crumbling. Beside the crumbling statue, it's just a phrase that tells us where. So beside is a preposition, and beside the statue. So that's a prepositional phrase, and that tells us where. So we're going to write peeping where. Go ahead and finish this page, and you should be putting the answer here as well as marking the text, just like I've done. The next activity we're going to look at is going to put together the different things that we've done today with what we've been doing before. These are for practice. Let's see. At the dawn's first light, Lucia and Mateo set off on the trail to reach the summit before noon. So I'm going to drag and drop to label, but I'm also going to highlight. The subject is Lucia and Mateo. The action is set off. On the trail tells us where. To reach the summit tells us why. Before noon tells us when. And at the dawn's first light tells us when. You could argue that to reach the summit before noon is all one phrase. I think that's how I meant it. At the dawn's first light is it a prepositional phrase or a dependent clause? That is a prepositional phrase because at lights, a preposition and an object of the preposition. On the trail is another prepositional phrase, on trail, tells where. And then to reach the summit tells us why. And before noon is another prepositional phrase to tell us when. Phrase at full. So that's how you're going to do these. Let's look at one more together. All right, let's look at the next one. They paused at a scenic overlook to admire the view as the sun climbed higher. They paused at a scenic overlook. It's a prepositional phrase that tells where. To admire the view is a phrase that tells why. As the sun climbed higher, the sun climbed, that's a little subjecting verb. So that's going to be a dependent clause. And then we're going to go ahead and color code. They pause at a scenic overlook to admire the view as the sun climbed higher. All right, so see if you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just write these on a sheet of paper and work them out for me. And then we'll come back together and see how you do.